Arizona's Central Highlands, Dick Yetman is an Arizona master naturalist whose passions have always drawn him outdoors. High altitude mountaineering, wilderness travel, and a lifelong study of natural history, geology, and ancient rock inscriptions. Dick attended Lincoln Elementary in Prescott, how cool is that? High school in Phoenix, and earned his BS in geology from the University of Redlands in 1970. He went on to serve 3 seasons as a wildland firefighter with the U.S. Forest Service in the San Bernardino National Forest. In 1973, Dick and his wife, Carol, who brought these lovely flowers today for her garden, by the way, married. And they've been married for 52 years and going strong. They then spent 4 years with Dick working in the National Park Service at Chiricahua National Monument, which is still one of their favorite places, where he worked as a trail crew boss and a ranger naturalist. Today, he continues to share his love of the outdoors and the fascinating stories written in the rocks and landscapes of Arizona. Here to tell us about Scratching the Surface, 10,000 Years of Native American Images on Stone, please help me welcome Dick Yetman.
I knew I'd get Marie to kneel down somehow. You always have to look up or otherwise. That's great. Just leave that script on there, that's good. Thank you, Maria. So in 1956, our family was living in Prescott, and my father was a Methodist minister, and one Saturday morning, my mother came in and said, "We are going to drive out to Bloody Basin to look for cactus fruit." Now, I was 8 years old, and I didn't know what she meant, but she did. And so we had a 1955 Chevy 4-door, and I climbed in the middle of the back seat. My sister Joan, who's right here, who is 85 years old. You weren't then. My sister Joan got on one side, my brother David, who is a year and a half younger than she, got on the other side. My mother in the front, my father driving. My father was reluctant, but he always went along because, like most smart men, he knows how to keep a woman happy and get what she likes. So we drove out to this place in Bloody Basin. It was only about maybe 9 miles from the highway. Black Canyon Highway was different back then. A lot of people in this room can remember that. But the road out there is still the same. And we used to go through a ranch and then up on top of the mesa. And so when we got up on top of the mesa, the road started to get really bad. My mother said, "Let's just stop here." So we stopped. And to this day, I don't know exactly where that was. And I've been back there many times trying to find the place, but it doesn't really matter. We started hiking, and so there were 3 things I really remember about this. First of all, it was hot. And it must have been September, and I had never, in my 8 years, experienced heat or thirst before. It's the first time I'd experienced that. The second thing I remember is the taste of water from a galvanized canteen. And ones with the blanket on the outside that's supposed to keep it cool, and it would if it stayed wet, and it never did because it evaporated. But the taste of that with the smell of that damp wool on the outside, I remember this day. And if I shut my eyes and smell that, I know what it was. But the third thing, which is very influential, was I saw my first petroglyph. And so you're gonna see a little bit of the things that I found today. What I'm going to do today is take you to 8 different places in Arizona and New Mexico where there are boom. Can we do that again? Ready to go? Boom. We're going to see petroglyphs. They're on basalt. And I love basalt. It's one of my favorite rocks. Of course, I could say that about most rocks, but when you live in Prescott, there's a lot of basalt, and I love it. So, I'm not going to look at these petroglyphs with you and tell you what they mean. I'm not going to try to interpret them because I don't know, and honestly, I don't think anybody knows. But what you're going to see in each of these 8 sites is a different series of petroglyphs, a different lifestyle from each one. And I hope by the end, when we get back to Prairie Mesa, you will go, wow, I see the difference in those. I hope you do. So why do we look at these? Well, first of all, these people did not have languages that we know of. They had languages, but they didn't write. And so archaeologists can tell us all the different things that they did, where they lived, maybe how they lived, but they can't tell us about them because they don't have any written language. However, the petroglyphs will tell us a lot about each one of these. So without the indigenous perspective on this, we just don't know what they're going to say. So there are many different ways to date petroglyphs and Indian ruins and things like that. And by the way, I'm going to say Indian a lot. They are truly the Native Americans, but I euphemistically end up saying Indian, so I hope that doesn't offend anybody. Archaic just means old, and there are so many different ways that these can be interpreted. So for today's talk, these will be the dates that we use. And archaic really means anything beyond 8,000 BC is archaic as well. So if you go to 8,000 BC, well, that's 10,000 years old. And the formative period began roughly when corn and other domestic crops were introduced. And that's when the formative period became, because then all of a sudden people started living in pueblos because they were tending farms rather than hunters and gatherers. And then finally the historic just means that's when the Indian lands were invaded by white people or people from other countries, and it just changed everything. Let's go the other way. Here we go. So first of all, I want to talk about pictographs versus petroglyphs. A lot of you already know the difference, but my daughter Kathleen is a very renowned baker in our family, and she's known for making wonderful desserts. So if I were to go over to her house and she just baked a cake, and let's just say it's a vanilla cake, if I were to go to her house and go in and I see that she hasn't put frosting on it yet, if I go over to that frosting and dip my fingers in there and put a D on it, then tomorrow, okay. If I put a D on that, I've just made a pictograph. I have painted upon that surface. Now, if I went there another day or the same day and she'd already frosted that cake and I went and I put a D in there, well, first of all, that'd be for doghouse because that's where I'd be. If I did that, I put that, then I've made a petroglyph. I've scratched the surface off and made a petroglyph. So that's the difference. Now, just for fun of it, I'm going to just show you a few images of pictographs. So these are all painted. This is hematite, and so hematite is a stone, and you put it on a wet rock and you rub it and it makes something. You can put your hand in it like that and do that, and this is probably what happened. Hematite was also used for putting on faces for sunburn protection, so they probably went like that and then rubbed their face like that. These are pictographs in Granite Creek, which is just a short distance before its confluence with the Verde River, because it creates a canyon there, which is actually very lovely to look at. My daughter Emily lives in Tucson, and she showed me this cave in the Tucson mountains where there is a lineup of these bighorn sheep with probably some sort of charcoal. These are pictographs of, who can tell me what that is? I think it's pretty obvious. It's not usually obvious, but it sure looks like a terrestrial tortoise to me. And that, once again, is done with hematite. And then this is up near the Grand Canyon, about 30 miles south. And what's ironic about these is that they're on limestone. The limestone is not a common receiver of petroglyphs or pictographs because it is so soft and they dissipate. Well, what's this? Whoa! Okay, these are columnar basalts, and you're going to see more of it, but this is a great tie into it. If you look down at the bottom down here, do you know how I get this? How do I get that? There we go. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Just fooling. If we look down here at these blocks, these are all hexagonal blocks that have fallen off. You see right there, there's one little there, they've fallen off. And so this is called columnar basalt, and it can be anywhere from 5 feet to 50 feet. This happens to be in Whitmore Wash of the Grand Canyon. Place, if you want to go to, you have your best friend take their vehicle. There's only a good day in the Arizona Strip, there's only one flat tire. Anyway, right below it, there is a trail right there. You can't see, but there's a trail goes along the bottom, and this takes you down to the Colorado River. And right above the trail's only about a foot wide here, and it drops off. But if you look up, you see these wonderful little pictographs here. They're really kind of cute. This is up in the San Rafael Swell in Utah. This place called the Head of Sinbad. And I always wonder, what are these guys? What are these little things here? What are they doing? Obviously that's a snake. Some people say this could be a Hopi style hairdo, but who knows? And look at these things here with, looks like the link. They're certainly not spermatozoa. I don't know what they are. So many of you here, I'm sure, were lucky enough to be here, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And Scott Tybee from Flagstaff was up here, and he took some photographs and showed us what he called Grand Canyon Archaic. And so it was a program about the pictographs it's called the Shaman's Gallery. Now, I was there about 15 years ago, and you can see this is a typical hangover from any one of the Tepete sandstones up in the Esplanade area of the Grand Canyon. But you can see, you can see these up and down here. You can see these things. And when you get up in there, you realize these are what we call anthropomorphic, meaning human representational. But look at the colors in these. And it's very difficult to photograph because you have to lean way back like this because of the angle of it. So what Scott did, he had a friend that came in, took pictures, and then digitally re-enhanced them to where they probably would have been. It's a phenomenal place. Now, some people claim that this is over 6,000 years old. Nobody knows for sure because you have to take a scraping off of this to find out, and fortunately nobody will. Anyway, it's an exceptional spot. Look at the colors with green. That's very unusual. This is one of the craziest places I've been to. This is in Horseshoe Canyon in Utah. It's called the Great Gallery. There may be somebody here who's been there, but these are anthropomorphic, but look at, they don't have any arms. Are they spiritual people? These are about 8 feet tall. They're 20 feet off the ground, so they would have had to have ladders to get up there and work on them. And then look at this. What are they doing? What is all this business down here? What's this guy doing here with, looks like a stick? Is he poking fun at that? We'll never know, but it's a wonderful place to visit. So now we're going to talk about petroglyphs. So in my estimation, 90% of the petroglyphs that we see throughout the West, whether it's Arizona, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, 90% are on sandstone and or basalt. Now, if you live in southern Utah, you're going to say, no, 60% are gonna be sandstone, 30% basalt. If you live here, it's the other way around. So anyway, there's a big difference there. So these are projected onto desert varnish. So desert varnish is manganese oxide, iron oxide, picked up by clay and then cemented by sun and heat. This is an example of desert varnish, but anybody who's driven through the Southwest has seen it. There was a man called Julian Hayden who lived in Tucson, who spent most of his career in the southern desert, in the Pinacate region, where it was exceptionally hot and dry. And he spent his whole career studying the ancient Indians that lived down there. And he came up with the theory, he was an archaeologist, came up with the theory that you could measure the date of artifacts by the amount of desert varnish on them. But the problem is, nobody knows how to do that. And as yet, nobody's figured it out. So he believes that people have been there for 40,000 years. Now, mainstream archaeology has not purchased that yet. But that's what he believed. So once again, just a refresher here on what our ages are. Now, within the formative period, within this right here, when we get to 900 to 1450, it's also called the classic period. So it just means that was the point at which many of these civilizations developed and really got into their best stages. I'm just going to throw a few images of sandstone before we go to the salt. Because once we get to the salt, we're not going anywhere else. This is called a procession panel. And what's fascinating about it is that you see all these people up here, they're all walking. They're all walking. If you get over to the left here, look at these guys. They got their arms up in the air and they're going, woohoo, this is fun, this is great. But the other thing is really, look at these guys with the cane. They're simply, what are they doing? Well, I read recently that a Hopi claimed that those were clan leaders. So there's one more part of this off to the right. And you can see there they are. There's the cane man right there. There's another cane man right there. Anyway, these are just fascinating. This is in western Wyoming. This is in the foothills of Wind River Range, but these are petroglyphs that have been drawn by the ancestors of the Arapaho Shoshone who still live there. Now this is another crazy one. This is out in the desert in Wyoming as well. And you can take your own gander at this and you can see if you can figure. The only similarity I find to the other ones is this particular image right here, which you'll see again. I'll show you in a minute. Look at this crazy. Check out the head on this guy. Look, whoa, what's my head doing up there? These are fun to look at, you know, and hopefully you go to bed at night and this is what you dream about. Because I think that's how these came. Michael Kellin, a local archaeologist here, says that all of these are telling a story. Well, I'd like to know what they were smoking because I want to try some of that. This is a very unique type of petroglyph here. This is a very soft sandstone. And so what they did is they took stones up to it and they raised it flat like that. They had a very smooth surface. And these are probably only 400 or 500 years old. But they didn't, I'm convinced they had shields and they put the shields up there and then marked around it like that and then took it off and then started marking. Because you try to draw a perfect circle like that, that's pretty impressive. And I think that when these were finished, they had paint on them. But being exposed to the elements, there's no evidence of that paint later. It would have been fun to be able to see what they looked like when they were done. But they were shining examples of what they were trying to describe. Here's another one from Wyoming. And you kind of see that carrot that I said you'd see again. There's another example of it. And then, of course, if we get near Woodruff Butte, which is up not very far from Holbrook, Arizona, along the Little Colorado River, there are thousands and thousands of images I would say those are bare feet on top. I don't know about the guys on the bottom, but when you see big hands and big feet, it generally means that that person is a healer, a shaman. And this guy seems to be jumping, but once again, who knows? And this is kind of the classic newspaper rock petroglyph that you see in many places, especially anybody who's traveled down the San Juan River on a boat. There are several places like this. These tell a story, but I think they tell lots of stories, and I think a lot of people were involved. And of course, we eventually see these all over the place. Is he smoking? Is he playing a flute? Is he blowing out? We just don't know. So finally we're going to get to basalt. And once again, basalt is one of my favorite stones ever. So I'm going to show you this map. I love Google Earth because sometimes I get lost on it when I'm looking for things. We're going to start right down about here. This is called the Growler Range, and it's just about 30 miles west of Ajo, Arizona. So it's way down in the desert. Then the Gila River goes like this and comes over here, and then it goes, that's called, this is where Gila Bend is, then it goes up and back, and then by Phoenix picks up the Salt River, and then goes all the way like this, all the way over into Mexico. Gila River is a tremendous watershed. And from there, we're going to go up to about here. We're going to go to Painted Rocks Reservoir first, and then we're going to go up to here on the Gila. Then we're going to go up by Las Vegas to a place called Sloan Mountain. Then we're going to go over here to Albuquerque. Then we're going to come back here to here's the Grand Canyon here. We're going to come out here in the Arizona Strip to a place called Nampoli. Then we're going to go, boom, back over here to New Mexico to a fabulous site, and then we're finally going to come back and end up right over here about where the A is in Arizona with Perry Mesa. And you'll all be done by 2:15 figuring out. Okay, so the first place that we're going to look at is, I call it Growler Canyon, and the reason I investigated this place is because I had read about it. It's one of the few places in the Southwest which is truly archaic. And so when you first walk down in this desert, it averages about 7 inches of rain a year. Not very much. But when you first go down, all of a sudden you look up and you see, hey, what's this? Well, that's kind of odd. And then the rest of these pictures, you're going to say, oh my gosh, this is weird. So these are all basalt boulders, and they've all been hecked to expose what's underneath. And they weather pink, but when you peck underneath it, it's almost white. So first of all, there's an indication that they're old right there. And one of the things I love about these is the way that they use each surface to utilize the image they want to put on there. Now, how do we know that these are archaic? Well, there's a number of things we can say. First of all, there are no or very few anthropomorphic drawings there. So anthropomorphic meaning people representative, or zoomorphic, animal or insect representative. And you can look at these and go, I see something, but no, you don't. I think that these are, these remind you of doodling. I don't think they were doodling so much as they just didn't have any patterns in their mind that we're used to. There's no geometry to this. There seems to be a random event. Now this particular image right here, you may see again a little bit later, elsewhere. But for the most part, these are just very random. Now why are they here? Why would there be this aggregation of all these images? Well, it turns out there's a spring there, which until about 50 years ago put out water. But fortunately, the BLM went in and put a solar pump on there, and now there's water again for animals. But that's the reason these are here, because there is water available. Now, there are trails that go through here that go all the way down to the Gulf and all the way up to the Gila River. And I have to tell you, there's no feeling like finding yourself on a trail that's been used for 10,000 years. And if you don't believe it, you can walk on and there will be a seashell on the ground, which was carried from the Gulf all the way up to there, en route to further north. But this was a trade route, and they used this place as a stopover. The other reason we know that it's old is because there's no pottery there. Well, there are a few pieces, but they were brought in later. Now, I want to point out, this image on the right is newer than the one on the left. You can tell by the coloration of the rock. But still, it's an archaic image. And that image on the right looks like an acorn. You probably see that one again, too. But don't you wonder what was going on in the mind of somebody who's making these? And we'll never know. Okay, and these are the only, there are probably 3,500 examples of this. These are the only anthropomorphic ones that I saw. And I didn't see everything, but I saw these. And so you can see there's a character right here, and these are pecked on later, and you can see he's hanging on to this. Well, that's pretty creative. And I don't know about these others. First, there's one here and one here. I don't know what they're doing, but almost looks like somebody tried to draw another thing for them to hang on to. And the only true anthropomorphic one that I saw was this. Now, this is an upside down person. And there was, unfortunately, there was a huge Palo Verde. You can see the shadow of it. And I couldn't quite get to it. So I thought, well, I'll just do an upside down picture when I got home, but I never got to that. However, I kept thinking about why would somebody pick it that way. So I went around to the back side of that rock, and I laid over like this, and it was perfect. It was the perfect position to do it. I'm sure that's what happened. They just laid there and were able to sit there and work on that with two hands, easily. So, I got this image many years ago from a friend, and these are southern pilots, and they lived on the North Rim. The reason I put this in there, you know, we look at situations like we were just talking about, and you always say, what's your image of what they look like? What do you think they look like? What were they like? Well, I think that even though this is only about 150 years old, I think that the people you have seen there are very similar to this. Look at the feet on the guy to the left. He is shoeless. The other guy has moccasins, but they have a bow and arrow, each one of them. And I would bet you that these guys could outshoot Robin Hood with one arm. I'll bet they were deadly with those, because everything in their life was immediate. I'm hungry, I need food right now. Heck with the family, I gotta eat, now I'll get food for them. So this is what they did. They went out every day, and talk about being adapted to their environment. So now we're going to move up onto the Gila River to a place called Painted Rocks Reservoir. It is about 30 miles west of Gila Bend, and I had read that there was a lot of archaic rock art there. So when I first got up to it, I got out and oh yeah, okay, good, yeah, this is archaic stuff. And then I started looking around. There's a fence around this, by the way, so too many people want to come by and look at it because you can drive right up to it. But then I started looking around and seeing a little more anthropomorphic stuff here, and then it all went to hell. No, excuse me. and then I started seeing all these images up high, and I can just hear them. Hey, John, there's a spot over here. Come here. You know, let's leave no stone unmarked. And I began to feel almost claustrophobic. In fact, when I was leaving, I rolled up my sleeve to make sure I wasn't in a bad tattoo bar. Now, this is on up the Gila River just a short ways. And this is a shot from Google Earth, and this is the Gila River coming directly south. Phoenix is up this way, Buckeye, and then it comes down. And this is an enormous agricultural area, obviously. And the Gila River comes down, and right about here it hits an old dam called the Gillespie Dam, and then it goes under a wonderful bridge, and does that. Well, many things about this are fascinating, but we have been, when we travel south, my wife Carol and I use the road, which is right over here. There's a canal, and this road follows the canal. So this is called the Gillespie lava flow. And originally, this lava flow went across the river, went all the way across here, and it dammed up, or darned up, like I used to say, it darned up the Gila, and then it created a big lake that went way back up there. So it was probably, this is between 1.5 and 3 million years old, so that was probably dammed up for, could be several thousand years before the Gila River finally broke through and cut through. And that'll make sense in a minute. So anyway, we take this road, we come up here, and then you can see the road jumps up on top right here, and then and goes over the top and then drops back down. Well, many times when we were driving home, I was looking at this cliff out here and thinking, there should be petroglyphs there. I was sure of it. So finally, when I was by myself, I went up and I parked up here. I couldn't find a way off. I'm like, well, heck, what am I going to do? So I drove back down and parked down at the bottom. And then I looked up, and I could see, with my binoculars, I could see some petroglyphs up there. So I hiked through the thorn scrub and up the blocky slope, and there they were. All right. And I, just seeing, when you see the first petroglyph someplace you don't expect it, it's always exciting. So this is a columnar basalt. Once again, similar to what we saw back in the long time ago. Where was that? Whitmore Lodge. And we see a lot of different forms along here. And at some point, I looked to my left, and I saw something glint in the sun. And so when I looked down, I realized that what had happened was that over the last 100 years, farmers, ranchers, anybody that lived nearby, was driving up on top and using that as a dump. So they were throwing things off, but it's not all bad, because as I looked down below, I identified, I had to write this down, a Western Flyer tricycle, red and white, but the rubber was all gone, a vacuum television tube, a hood of a car with Studebaker. That's all, Studebaker on it, not Studebaker. An avocado green electric kitchen range, and best of all, a refrigerator with the door off. You can bet your Budweiser there's some high fives up on top when that went down. So, anyway, that was a great course in urban archaeology. But anyway, as I continued along, it seemed like I got richer the further I went. But then I looked down on my feet, and I'm walking across this, and I'm thinking, like, for some reason I'm thinking bathroom floor. Well, what happened was that there was remember I told you that it had dammed all the way, and then the river cut through. Well, the river had cut underneath the lava cap that was up there, and at some point, this whole section of lava came straight down like that. And so what we're seeing there are the tops of these columnar basalt. So it's like I'm walking across the top of these things. Anyway, it's very cool. And I think I'm not the first person to recognize those were cool. Anyway, a few more pictures from this spot. You can see the difference already from the archaic to what we have here. There's a lot of, now we're starting to see patterns in here. We didn't see anything geometrically like that down in the Growler Range. Now what are these guys doing? Look at these guys here, they're upside down. And is this guy, is he the jefe, is he the chief? I don't know. Anyway, I love this rock because it's what we call aphanitic, which means very fine grain. This is aphanitic basalt, and that's why it has this glassine texture on it. It gives such great combination. More of this texture, and I read recently that the Hohokam, who dwelt in this valley for a long time, this was a formative period for them about 1100 when they started using this as a reflection of the pottery they were making. And I had to get this guy in because he needs a cowboy hat on, and you'd see him in front of a Lakey station. So the next place is called Lower Gillespie, and this, I had to get back on the road, and so I got up here and I drove, and then the road comes like this, and then you go across this bridge. So the Gillespie Bridge, it's called, was built in 1927. It has 9 spans of trestle bridge connected 200 feet along for a total of 1,800 feet, which is a third of a mile. And it's a great bridge. You go across and you put your, you know, and you just, I look forward to it. I've been across it many times. So I got on the bridge, I went across the other side, and this is a canal, goes around along here. So I stopped where they've got one of these 300-gallon per minute wells pumping into the canal, which there are many of. I stopped to get my water bottle out, and as I was looking back at the other side, I was looking at, I was looking back at the other side, I was looking over here, and I could see something. I got my binoculars out and looking across, and I could see something down here on this last lobe of the volcanic terrace down here. So I knew I had to go back, and I got in the truck and went back across it. And then on the west side, there was a tiny dirt road. This is it right here. So I started down this road. I looked in my rearview mirror, and I couldn't see a thing. Well, I just discovered where dust was invented. And finally, I got down to here, and there was a little tiny turnout. So I pulled into the turnout, and I really had to wait like a minute for everything to clear out. And then finally, I opened the door, my truck opened up, and dust just ran off. It was so much. My blue truck was now tan. But right in front of me was a little tiny trail that went back in the direction I wanted to go, which was, I wanted to go right back here to the base. I wanted back here to the base. And and then there's a cable across it, and it says, "Do not enter, keep out. This means you." So, you know those tags on mattresses that say, "Do not remove under." Well, needless to say, I crossed over, and what I found was shotgun shells, bullet casings, broken bottles, beer cans with buckshot or bullet holes, and broken clay pigeons. But I went on across, and I got to the bottom, and it's full of thorn scrub, and I started to climb up the rubble there, and some of the things were the size of the Volkswagen. The rocks were much bigger there. But I finally got up to the top, and I looked over the boulder, and this is what I saw. And I went, wow! I went, whoa! I couldn't believe it. This is 4 feet high. This is what I had seen from the other side. I just saw, from the other side, I just saw the tip of this up here. So I was just excited. This is not like anything I had seen before. This is really exciting. And then, to make it better, just next to it is this. And first I thought, okay, kids have been partying up above and they came down here. And no, there's nothing. There's no evidence that anybody has fouled up this spot. Now, I'm not the first person to see these, but I can't tell you how exciting it is to find something like this. I like this character here because of mouths open. And you'll see this when we start looking at petroglyphs of deer. A lot of them will have their mouths open just like that. Anyway, I'm working across this one, and you can see there's a lot of similar to what we saw at Upper Gillespie, down to Lower Gillespie. This is, and then I started running into these pattern type, fabric type, and this once again ties into the Hohokam change in painting of their pottery around between 8 and 900 AD. And a lot of times when I take a picture like this, it's not till I get home before I realize what I've seen, because there's so much stuff underneath that you can't see under certain light. You can see several layers of different implements in this one. I'm going to have a wall like that in my house. Anyway, this is Lord Gillespie. We're seeing a lot of images here that we're not going to see. Now, from here we're going to go up to Sloan Mountain, and this is just south of Henderson, Nevada. And the only reason I went there was because I had read that there was archaic petroglyph display up there. So, what made this a little challenging was that Henderson, Nevada is essentially Las Vegas, and it's a system of freeways and streets, and I finally got on the road that I wanted. On one side there's a Del Webb subdivision, on the other side it's all desert. Literally, one side to the other. And I could see up ahead with the road I wanted. It was only a quarter mile long to a kiosk, and that there would be a trailhead there, and that's what I was looking for. So I got up to the road, and the traffic slowed down. And I realized there's a guy with a flag up there, stop sign. So I get up the stop sign, and I look over in the right where I'm going to turn, and there's a chain link fence across the road. I've just driven 350 miles. Chain link fence across the road, construction vehicles only, danger, keep out. So I had like 5 seconds to decide. So I tore the tag off the mattress, turned and went in, past road graders, front end loaders, backhoes, and followed the road back. And suddenly I came to a big area. Well, they were making a parking lot, a 3-tiered parking lot. So I go, okay, well that kind of makes sense. There's guys with surveying equipment and hard hats and vests, all the safety gear. And I saw some vehicles parked up there, so I ran quickly, got my truck up there and parked, and hopped out, grabbed my day pack and water and make sure I had everything, took off, and I looked over it. They're building a visitor center there at a rammed earth, and it's going to be beautiful. But that's what was happening, and fortunately, that didn't dissuade me. So once I got off the hill there and found the canyon, it was marvelous. It was just like thousands of miles that I've hiked up desert washes, or arroyos, if you want to call them. And the further I got in, the deeper it got, and the bigger it got. And there were 5 major pour-offs, and that just means places where the basalt just piles up and gone like that. And they were pretty negotiable. The last one took a few minutes to negotiate, to figure out. And when I first got up, this is the first thing I saw. So I'm going, all right, hey, this is archaic. Yeah, this is what I came to see. Well, I looked around more. Now, first of all, this doesn't look like basalt, but it is. And I'm seeing quite a few sort of familiar images there. And, images that you think, what? I don't see the rhyme or reason to this, which is good. And all of a sudden I see an anthropomorphic thing. Well, I don't know what that guy's doing. He's not doing pull-ups, or it could be a woman, I don't know. But fascinating to see this. Now, this is absolutely one of the driest places you could imagine. And what I always wonder, anytime I get to a place like this, is where was the water? Where is the water? Where was the water? So this is a dry desert wash, and behind it is maybe 15 feet wide of sand. And so I believe that when the native people came through here, they would dig down into that sand, and it was always dug up unless it had just flooded. And so that sand would essentially have an aquifer of water, foul to our taste, but it was good enough for them. So looking up at this, you can see that this rock, now this rock is, normally we would say a rock is competent, which means it's good hard rock, it'll hold up. This is not competent rock, and it's not incompetent, it's just not competent. And you'll see that there's a lot of flaking off of this rock, and it's impacted from rocks falling up on top and just breaking big chunks up. But there are a lot of petroglyphs here which just mean a a lot of people came through here at one point in time. There was no place that anybody could live here. There's no place flat. If you wanted to sleep, you'd have to lay into Sandy Creek, which would be probably a little iffy certain times of the year. But you can see at the bottom where the flash floods have coming from left to right have damaged the rock there, and are just, that's normal wear and tear. Look at this, the tops of this stuff is all broken off right over here, just spalled off, meaning impact. Now this is interesting because there is a image of corn right here. So that tells us that this was done sometime after, maybe 100 BC or later. So the next place we're going to go to is Petroglyphs National Monument, and this is in New Mexico. And I just want to warn you that these are a little bit bright, so I hope you all can bring your sunglasses because you're going to need them here in the bright sunshine. So the reason this is in here, obviously, besides the fact that it's basalt. How many of you heard of Chaco Canyon? Well, Chaco Canyon is a pretty well-known archaeological site, one of the most informative sites around. It's just incredible. And Chaco Canyon, because of drought primarily, what was the year here? I think the year was about 1130. 1130 to 1190, there was a severe drought. And the head archaeologist on that turned out to be a friend of ours when he moved here to Prescott, and he said that drove the people out, and they went west to the Rio Grande River and were assimilated into a lot of the pueblos that were there. So this is interesting because these are just petroglyphs, but nobody was living here. These are people in transit leaving messages for other people who are coming along. And you're going to see what a difference these messages are from the other things we've looked at. And these are the first, what I would call Pueblo type pictographs that you would see. I like that guy. I kept thinking there's a bone in his mouth. But no, it's not the case. So many of the local Pueblo people still believe this site is sacred to them because they believe that there are still messages from their ancestors there. So fortunately, the encroachment of the city of Albuquerque was creating a problem, and it was put into a national monument. People were coming into their backhoes and stealing boulders for their front yard. So fortunately, it's now a national monument, even though you can walk 3 minutes and you're in the neighborhood. But that's okay, because they've been safe. And this is the first place that I have seen these handprints. And I wondered, there's one right up here with 6 fingers. It's not uncommon, I've discovered. We consider it strange, but maybe it meant something else. Once again, we don't know what these mean. And there's one of these guys sucking on a tube of some sort. Okay, now we're going to go back to Arizona Strip. Now, not too far from Whitmore Watch, where I showed you the first kilometer of basalt. This is called Napoli. And this particular place is probably from the ancestral southern Paiute. And it's, once again, it's aphanitic basalt, very fine grained basalt, but you can see it's not columnar. It's not nearly as big. There's a huge volcanic field out there, which is semi-active even today. People don't realize that the volcanics from this dammed up the Colorado River 16 times in the last 50,000 years. And one of the dams was so high it put water almost up the Lee's Ferry. And the river eventually eroded each one of them out of the way. Now these people weren't around, but we know when they were there because there was an eruption almost the same time as the one San Francisco Keys. And we know what the date of that was, so we know that these people are about the same age as Brad. And also, they're start to see these guys, I like these guys with their beak open like that. You can see the base of the beings up here that is scratched in. Well, that is probably some sort of a ceremony. There's a different one, very similar. This is something that on Prairie Mesa I have never seen. So there is obviously some sort of ceremonial thing going on here. And look, is this a person up here in charge? Or is he dying? Is he ascending to heaven? Or are they just having fun? Bighorn sheep seem to be a major player in so many of the petroglyphs that we see throughout the Southwest. And I've always been a little bit confused as to why there were so many there and there are so few now. Well, I was told recently that when sheep and goats were brought into the Southwest by Anglos, they carried diseases that almost completely wiped out the native bighorn sheep population. So, back then, there were probably a lot of them. And I only put this one in because I think this was scratched on much after the other ones. Pretty poorly done, I have to say, even though he does have 6 fingers. Never get tired of seeing bighorn sheep. Now, Three Rivers is in New Mexico, and if you ever get a chance to go to this, I would recommend it. That's on the east side of the Rio Grande River. It's between Carizoso and Tularosa in a valley. I think it's called the Tularosa Valley. And these are very difficult to describe, but the first thing you'll see here is, boy, there's a big change in what we're looking at. They've got fabric, they've got angles, they've got geometry, and I look at this as a very cosmopolitan assemblage. And you'll see why I like this. It's a very user-friendly place. You have to do a little bit of work to get to the petroglyphs, but there's no fences. You can get right up to them. You can take pictures of them close. You can look. You can see what's there. Now, every time I see this, I think of the Wright brothers. I don't know why. I don't think that's it. But they did a lot of concentric circles. These are not spirals, these are concentric circles. And as you go along, I think they also had a sense of humor too. I think they enjoyed themselves. Maybe this guy, maybe this was his father-in-law, I don't know. Which reminds me, we always assume that peoples like this were, like we are, monogamous. But a friend of mine recently visited a group in the Amazon, which had very little contact with modern people to this day. And he came away saying that they believed that when a woman was pregnant, she was encouraged to have copulatory sex with every man that would, because they believed that it made the baby stronger. Now we can say, well, that doesn't make any difference, but they believe it. And so why wouldn't these people believe the same thing? So I can point out the obvious, but I'm going to let you do the rest of the work. See, there's some sort of a bird. Look at that. He's got a beak open. What is this over here? It's got 4 legs. A bird with 4 legs. I don't know. But I like the snakes. These big long serpents down there like that. And this is fun because I would say that's a representation of some sort of a feline. I don't know. But these people clearly had good imaginations. In this case, this current petroglyph was written over almost the same of it. So maybe 100 years later, somebody came back and said, I got to redo that. That looks terrible. Thunderbirds. And you don't see thunderbirds on the basalt very often. Well, I don't. Maybe other people do. More serpents, snakes, and look at the mask up on top here. If you want to call it a mask, who knows? At first I thought this was a bicycle, but it took me a minute to adjust my eyes, and I believe it's a representation of a deer with horns. And I don't know what he's trying to do to the circle, but they appear to be done at the same time. And of course, there's the happy corn person. How can you see anything else that happened in that one? So this one I really like, because if you look at this over here, here's the mouth, here's the eye, and look at this graceful set of horns. This person was a real artist that did that. This person had a real sense of aesthetics. And then, a parrot. So we know that this particular group of people were influenced strongly by Mexico or even Central America, because there were parrots there, and the parrots were carried up. You imagine carrying a parrot for 300 miles and keeping it alive? More fabric, more creative stuff. Once again, this is really unique, and there were supposedly over 35,000 different petroglyphs at this place, if you have the time or the inclination. But you're getting away easy today. Now, I would say that was a parrot in the foreground, but I could be wrong about that too. And there is a rare horizontal anthropomorph up on top. What's with this? What's with the head? Now, I love the bird tracks up the side. The road runners, and right next to the snake, were they connected? Was there a story being told there? More masks, more humor. And I would, in my opinion, this is a dragonfly. And we've learned recently that dragonflies migrate or even into Mexico. So they may have a whole significance of spring coming or fall, depending on where they are. That appears to be a dog, and these people apparently did have dogs. And I would say that's a human foot, not a bear foot, because of the arch. And of course, this is almost 6 feet high, so whoever did this probably had to stand on something to do it, because I would have been a giant in their world. And I have to throw this because I'm a sucker for lichen. I love lichen, and this particular lichen, this yellow lichen, only occurs on north-facing slopes. So, okay, finally, we're going to get back to Prairie Mason. So this is Prairie Mason. I-17 comes down. Sunset Point is right over here. So if you look directly east from Sunset Point across this deep canyon, this is called Joe's Hill right here. It's a low, it's a low volcano, and it's responsible for all the volcanic activity all the way around here. But that was between 1 and 5 million years ago. The road comes off of I-17 right here. You can see it goes like this over here and then down. Now the Otter River starts and goes all the way up through like that. Don't get suckered, it goes this way. Just go straight up toward Portage Junction is right up here. And so this kind of gives you a geographic idea of where we are. The one ruin that is marked is called Cabalapata, and it is right up here. And so the road up on the mesa takes you to that, and you get up here, takes you back to it. There are ruins here, 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 down here, and all the way over here like that. So, what we don't know about the people of Prairie Mesa, first of all, we don't know where they came from. Nobody knows. We don't know where they went. They were there approximately from 1250 to 1450, approximately 200 years. But what we do know, there are over 300, I read this, There are over 300 archaeological sites identified. 7 of those major sites are pueblos, 6 miles apart roughly. So they're spread out over an enormous area within walking distance of Daly. 6 out of 7 of those have over 100 rooms. 3 out of 7 have over 300 rooms, and many of these sites were 2 stories high. So I'm just going to scroll through this as I try to read here. And you'll see some of our favorite animals in these as well. All the sites here have similar redware and brownware ceramics without being adorned or painted, which just means they have pottery that isn't marked. 150 sites have less than 10 rooms. Many sites have courtyards. Now I have to show this one because I told you I love lichens, and this is on a north-facing slope. So we'll never know for sure what's underneath there, but the one prior to it was right next to it, so maybe we can extrapolate a little bit from that design to this. This is about almost 3 feet high, so it was a big design at one time. There's little archaeological evidence of any outside influence on the whole Perry Mesa regime. So Perry Mesa area is referred to as the Perry Mesa tradition. They were successful farmers. Check out the big feet. Does he heal with his feet? His happy hands. Sometimes when I see 2 or 3 together, I wonder if it's the same person that did it. And once again, one of my favorites is the deer with his mouth open over here. And I never get tired of seeing those. The Perry Mesa residents were successful dry farmers. They farmed corn and squash, multiple native seeds and nuts. They mastered complex and extensive water and soil devices in agricultural fields, including mini gardens and waffle gardens above and in the canyon. Each pueblo was designed to access the water. That didn't mean it was easy, but they likely transported water in animal skins or in bladders. They left behind rock ring roasting pits. By the way, what is that? Get back to me on that, okay? They left rock ring roasting pits, which were normally used for roasting agave. The tools they left behind were basalt flake knives, which would have been used to scrape agave after it was baked, and bedrock metates and comales, which are big stones that were put in a fire for cooking tortillas. So, because of the openness of the terrain and the vast distance between settlements, one has the experience when you're out there that you're the only one around and you're seeing things that have never been seen before, which is probably not true. There's been a lot of archaeological study done out there, but today you can go out to any one of these sites and feel like you're the first person there, and that's very special. Over here we see a corn plant. What is this business on the side here? The duck, you know? Check out the duck, for real. John Duck was telling me about the underduck out there the other day. The duck had a very special symbolism to them. I think a lot of this is done because they were telling stories, but also I think it was the way that they dealt with the heat. A lot of these places we're looking at were on the east or west or north facing slopes. So when it got hot, they would get in the shade and they could get creative and take it. Now that may be a quail. I don't know what else it could be. And Greg Murray, who's not here today, was out there with me last December, and he's a biologist, and he looked at that immediately, and he said, well, that's a turtle carapace right there. That's a turtle skeleton. So, check out the big hands again. And after a while, maybe you begin to see that there's a common artist here. They all have to have the same body shape. Maybe this spot belonged to one person. There it is again. Same situation. Whoop. A little too fast. Now, what I like about this is I believe this is a cricket. Who needs 6 legs? Step 2. And then I see the same image in another one right in the middle here. This is another one right here, and another one right here on the left. So as you can see, there's no shortage of things to look at. And all you have to do is start to walk, and you get in the right place. You will walk forever and still want to go home. So this is one of the few painted images here, probably with hematite, but it's amazing to me that it's still there after all this time. And these are known as the red deer out there. Everybody tries to find them, and if you're lucky you do, and if you're not lucky you keep looking.
Yeah.
So, several months ago, I took 2 of my grandsons who were, let's see, they are 7 and 9. I took them out to Curry Mesa for an afternoon, and we were going to look for petroglyphs. We wandered around, we went to the rim of the canyon, and we finally got to the point where I didn't have to babysit them. They can go out on their own, they can move around. And I was off by myself, we were looking for petroglyphs, and all of a sudden I hear this, come quick, come quick. And I knew it wasn't a rattlesnake, it was too cold. It wasn't a Gila monster because it was March. So I got there as quickly as I could. And here's my grandson, Otis, who will be 8 on his next birthday. He found his first petroglyph. So my hope is that 70 years from now, he'll remember that as fondly as I do. So this is adios, but not goodbye. Thank you. You still have 22 minutes. You may leave. If you have any questions, you can come up or we can ask now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make a comment about the Great Gallery. And if any of you have not been there, oh my gosh. As you mentioned, these are 6 to 8 feet tall and the spookiest pictographs you'll ever see. Well, you mentioned that, gosh, these are so high, they must have painted them while standing on ladders. What I read was, if you assume they painted them while standing on the ground, and you combine that with the erosion rate of the floor of the canyon, which they can do reasonably well, you arrive at an age of those pictographs 3,000 years.
Okay, well that settles that then. No more ladders?
Who knows?
Hi, so I live in Skull Valley, off Toronto Road.
Uh-huh.
And we've got pictures out there. Have you seen them?
Are they down by where the railroad bed was?
Beyond, just before Rancho Diamante. I think you'll get on to Collie Diamante off Toronto.
No, I don't think I have.
And they're up on the right, we've seen them. And, they're black, I think. They're black.
Oh, great. Will you show me?
Yeah.
What are you doing afterwards?
I was wondering, some time ago I went up to south of Winslow. All I can say is Bradley Baird's ranch.
Oh, yeah. Ranch.
Rock Art Ranch.
Oh, Rock Art Ranch.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that fantastic?
Yes.
Yeah.
And is he still alive, and is he?
I heard that he died. So this is a,
It's closed.
It's
Yes,
closed.
I read it was, that they closed it off.
so it is a privately owned section of, I think, is it West Clear Creek goes through there? Anyway, maybe it's Chevron Creek goes through there.
Chevron Canyon.
Yeah,
The Chevron Canyon, and, it is incredible the amount of rock art in there on sandstone. But you had to call the guy and tell him, and he would leave the gate open for you, and you're supposed to leave a donation, which I'm sure everybody did, because it's out of this world. But then there's a lot of places out of this world.
Yeah, I remember showing up there
Yeah.
and, talking to him, charged us $30 a piece. And got in conversation as to how he charged that, and he said, depending on what type of car you.
Yeah, I was gonna say. He was looking at your pockets.
Incredible museum.
Yes.
A couple quick questions. How long have snakes, do you think, been in the pictographs and petroglyphs in history?
Well,
Way back or-
that's a good question, but they would be zoomorphic.
Okay.
So when we looked at the growler petroglyphs, there was nothing apparently zoomorphic, though if you studied them, perhaps you would find something. I can't answer that.
Then concentric circles, we saw a lot of those, and then later in your presentation, you started showing us.
Right.
Circles, and you see a lot of those also. Are they, do you think in the same time period or different?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an opinion, that's all it would be.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there are concentric circles and spirals, both. So a lot of people say, well, when there's a spiral, it means there's water nearby. And no, that means that the sun came up over there. No, who knows? Yes.
The V-Bar-V archaeology site.
Oh.
It has a new name, and I can never remember what the new name
Is it the crane?
Yes.
Yeah.
Crane, yeah, okay, and there's a whole wall, a local archaeologist has said it's a sun calendar. And indeed, if you're there on.
Solstice.
It's one of the
Uh-huh.
solstices, then a sun dagger will hit the symbol for that solstice.
Will you put that on my calendar for next week? Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I've been both to where the dock petroglyph is and the painted theater. There's large ruins by both of those spots on the edge of Perry Mesa. And there's also trails that go down to the bottom to where I assume farming was done. Creek that steep down slope. Too treacherous that I didn't really want to go down by myself, and the people I was with didn't want to go down there. Have you been to the base of either of those areas where there's maybe an agriculture?
I've been to the bottom of the canyon, and I just expect when they were there, they had very well-used paths. I know what you mean about them being pretty treacherous. The one in, what's called the Squaw Creek Rim, that's about a 600-foot drop down the creek, and it's gonna take you an hour to go down there and back if you're just walking. I followed a trail halfway down there and then I lost it, so.
And one follow-up question, not that area, but out towards Juniper Mesa, you're going out all the way past Williams.
Right.
As you go on the south side of Juniper Mesa, you'll come to a gate, and it used to be a block of floats.
It still is. Yeah.
Have you ever been out to the petroglyphs there? I got lucky about 30 years ago to get permission to go out there. There's an area where I would estimate thousands upon thousands.
I haven't been there and I would love to go there. You were in? Okay, well, yes,
Real quick, have you been to Grapevine Canyon outside of Waffle?
I haven't. That was on the list. It was either that or Sloan Canyon.
Spend a day out there easy.
Yeah.
There's thousands of
And a
them.
lot of archaic stuff in there as well. Yeah.
There's a seasonal waterfall back in the canyon.
Okay, yes.
So, what year range do the Salina Gulch petroglyphs fall in?
I'm sorry,
The Salina Gulch
What?
petroglyphs?
have I seen
What-
the one right down here?
Salina.
Yeah, yeah.
How old are they?
They're probably Well, they would have been done probably with the Prescott culture, they were probably between 900 and 1200 AD. That's just a guess, maybe a little bit newer, but I don't think so. They're certainly not archaic. Mr. Holt?
Thank you very much for an amazing presentation. I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank